And we're online.
All right, everyone. I'm happy to see, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 people not here. I'm glad to see that you braved this horrible storm that's supposed to be dumping 18 inches of snow all over the place. So far it's not holding up to its prediction.
Hey, don't be so confident. I have a gig later today. I don't want to be.
You want to try to get out of it?
No, I want to try to stay with it.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's that? No answer. No, don't.
No, not answering, just muting and turning off the screen.
Okay. All right, okay. Well, I think today we should do Monteverdi, Madrigal. And since I could not get the copier to work appropriately, unfortunately we'll have to do it by ear. Wouldn't that be a tragedy?
Actually not.
No, I hope not. I think that would be a good thing. And behind you, is that my copy? No.
This is a whole stack of
Yeah,
cards.
let's hand those out.
Thank you.
Now, we're in the middle of this series, 12 easy pieces that made music, right? And I mean that seriously. A lot of people think, what in the world is he talking about? Well, I chose 12 different pieces that I think were watersheds in the development of Western music. And I'll say Western music. Actually, I got a communication from some former colleague that made a comment about Western music and tonality, and somehow it all boiled down to the fact that the prejudice about Western music and tonality was a form of racism.
Oh, I saw this. Somebody.
You have to be kidding, right?
Isn't non-Western music tonal?
Well, that's the general notion. After 7 years of research, that's what I've discovered. So, I don't want to get off track too much, but I will. You know, it's exactly the kind of what the focus is in here. What you think has some kind of ramifications. And most of the time, we put things together and say things that aren't necessarily coherent. Well, I think that's one of them. And it could have a terrible influence on people. Well, obviously the person that made that statement was influenced by other people who seemed to feel that Western achievements in Western music and Western art is some kind of, in relationship to the world, is some kind of prejudicial view. Well, if you think about it, where are the origins of Western civilization? Where is that?
Greece?
Well, where did the Greeks get their information from? The Phoenicians. And where did the Phoenicians get their information from?
The aliens?
Etruscans.
Egypt?
Well, that's one source, absolutely. And where else? Sumerians, much further east. Now, how far back does the antecedents of the Greek civilization go?
The Minoans? Like...
Okay,
around
well,
2000?
yes, but the Minoans, how far does that go back? I mean, the Minoan civilization is actually the first, like, recorded civilization. So it would have to, in other words, we have recorded documents, okay?
600
So
BC.
according to, yes, that's right, just hold that information, but according to at least the information we have concerning the storing or representation of documents, that goes back to like 25 basically 2500 BC, yes. Okay, well, in the invention of writings, or of writing. Well, that corresponds with many civilizations. The Egyptians, right, and many of the Far Eastern civilizations arose about that time. They've been in existence. Now, when is the first civilizations? Where was the Minoan civilization?
Crete.
Crete, yes. And just recently, I think, I don't know when it was, but I know that it was fairly recent, they discovered evidence of hominids in Crete that go all the way back to 130,000 years ago. That doesn't mean that they had like a bustling civilization, but there's evidence of all kinds of, there are artifacts that indicate that that island had people on it 130,000 years ago. Wow, that's a long time, yeah? What do we consider BC, the division between BC and AD? How many years are in AD so far?
2017 in a couple months.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Or
That is somehow remote from 130,000 years ago. Now, earlier in the year, we talked about the various exodus out of Africa. The last one, so to speak, was about 150,000 years ago. And presumably, it was modern human beings that exited Africa at that time. And what are the Homo sapiens? Who were their relatives? There was a final branching, Homo sapiens. And what is the common ancestor? Do you remember?
I remember a couple back.
Homo
Australopithecus.
heidelbergensis, right? And those two branches would be Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. Now, apparently the Neanderthals were in existence till about 80,000 years ago. But I don't know. I just think that to bash the contributions of the West is a very myopic and social-driven issue. Now, there may be some components to that bear some kind of, that have some kind of accuracy to it, but I highly question that. Western civilization is not Western. It's global in its history, and it supersedes the Greeks by many, many years. Most of the contributions in mathematics and in science are not directly Western. They're what?
Arabic? Islam?
Chinese or But
Babylonian, Sumerian. The penchant for abstraction is a fundamental characteristic of what great civilization. It's not Greek.
Were you talking about algebra?
No, right now I'm talking about the Western eye, so-called the Western eye, the capacity for abstraction in art and other things. Where does that come from? Egypt. Egypt is the direct antecedent of what we experience today in our culture, artistically. It was long before the 50 or 60 years that's associated with the glory of Athens or Western civilization.
what do you mean by abstraction in art, or like in the context of
Representation. An aspect of representation. And that constitutes also things that happen in language, things that are represented through language. At any rate, I find that extremely boring, and I don't know how I got on that, but at any rate, the 12 pieces that we're talking about actually go through the advent of musical structure in Western music, and will take it up to its untimely bifurcation in the 20th century. And we stand now right about at the on the verge of major discoveries that allowed Western music to become what it actually became. And that is a system of representation in discrete pitch that has the property of recursive, hierarchical structuring, and digital infinity. Those are all characteristics, I believe, of language. And language is actually a representation, in a certain way, of thought. So both music and language are forms of thought, explicated thought. And the interesting thing about Western music is that Western minds, because they are rooted in the particular idea of abstraction and abstract thought, were able to discover intrinsic elements or innate elements in human mental structure that is open to all human beings, but develop that to a very high level. And in my opinion, my way of thinking, it parallels what the language capacity or the language faculty is. So those things, to me, contribute to an understanding of what is common to all human beings. Is that clear enough? Is that clear? All right. Well, it seems like to me, rather than splitting people apart and constructing these diverse cultures, and then trying to construct some artificial way of binding those people together by saying, I'm okay, you're okay, that kind of flimsy attitude, I think it drives that attitude, that kind of false unity, creates a further conflict and division between people. So my journey through, I hate that expression, our trip, or whatever you want to call it, yeah, that's more like it, like a psychedelic trip through the development of Western musical technique is actually an exploration of what is capable in the Western mind. And Western music certainly doesn't develop all of the possibilities in the human mental structure, but it certainly does develop a lot of them, just as all languages don't develop everything that are possible in languages. Some, very few, others, many more. English actually does not develop all that many. There are many more languages that have other properties that English does not have, and that are far more complex. But those are obviously all parts of what the human mind is capable of doing, what the mental properties of human beings are capable of doing. So Monteverdi is one of the great synthesizers of musical technique. And he builds extensively on everything that we have talked about before. He takes certain ideas that arose in the forme fixe. He takes ideas that arose in the development of the mass composition, the parody mass and the paraphrase mass. And he also is building on techniques that came out of those techniques, which led to the Renaissance madrigal. What is the madrigal? Anybody know? What is a madrigal?
It's like a secular song that paints the text in ways that other forms didn't at the time.
Yes, what is the root of the word madrigal?
Mad and regal?
very much so. Not.
For angry kings,
Nope.
or angry princes.
Matrikali, which means what?
So,
Mother tongue. It's something in the vernacular, right? And it's specifically Italian. Now, this is all getting ready for Monteverdi. Who were the Ultramontani?
traditionalists?
Ultramontani,
Does,
in my southern pronunciation.
is that supposed to mean ultramontane people in Italian?
Who is that?
Well, doesn't the word ultramontane mean like super conservative or old fashioned?
No.
No, okay. Oops. Never mind.
Committed to maintaining what's
Never
happening,
mind.
maintaining the,
Beyond the mountains.
Oh.
They
Never
were
mind.
the Franco-Flemish composers that came to Italy. And who were the Franco-Flemish composers?
flank of
Josquin.
Flemish.
What?
Josquin.
Josquin, of course. And that crowd, right? What was the last piece of Josquin de Prez that we listened to? Yes, the Pangiolingua. We listened to the Kyrie from that, and we noticed that each individual voice now is paraphrasing or stating the cantus firmus, or the mixed or the fixed voice that serves as the melodic impulse for that. So it's a new use of the cantus firmus technique. No longer does it appear as a structured tenor voice around which the other voices were built and formed, but it's now used to spin off points of imitation in each individual voice. A major step forward in the technique. And then in the Et Incarnatus, which is from the Credo, we saw another remarkable thing, which is actually a forerunner of a technique of the madrigal, and that is note against note progressions. And if you remember, the progressions that occurred in that Et Incarnatus, most of those progressions were what kind of sonorities? 6/3, 5/3, 6/5, 7/5, what?
6/3.
5/3.
5/3 and a few 6/3s. Yep. Mostly 5/3 sonorities.
Oops.
And the original chant melody now appears in the superius, expanded over long notes. So it essentially is like a chord progression, if you can say something like that. Now, Clara, what was it you said about the madrigal?
That it was a secular type of unaccompanied vocal piece that painted the text in ways that maybe hadn't been seen before.
Was it for chorus or solo singers?
For like one on a part of like
Yes,
4 or 5
basically
people.
one on a part.
Yeah.
Yep. And the idea was a depiction of the text. They were searching for ways in which to depict the content or emotional or the expression of the text. And who were some of the principal madrigal composers of the 16th century? It was the 1500s. Josquin de Prez and Palestrina were 16th century composers. The Pangiolingua Mass is from 1519, something like that. Palestrina died in 1594, I think, along with Orlando de Lasso. So those are the great, like high-end 16th century polyphonic composers.
Monteverdi,
Early madrigal composers.
Cipriano.
Gesualdo.
Gesualdo was the only one that.
Who?
Carlo Gesualdo.
Oh, Gesualdo had murdered his wife, right? Right, that's why his music
Never
sounds so
forget.
chromatic. Right? That's an interesting thing. We have to talk about chromaticism. And who were some of the others? Let's go
Villard?
backwards. What?
Villard?
He was
Adrian Villard, yes. And anybody know, well, you know his dates because you're using up all your 20% on your computer. Does anyone have a portable digital device? Should do that, right? Okay, when did Adrian Villard live?
uh,
I don't have a charger.
And where did he live?
the
And don't say
Netherlands
Boston.
or Belgium or the
No.
Netherlands? Oh, was he
Oh,
Dutch?
come on, okay, you're an organist.
I know. He's Dutch. Okay, wait, really?
Adrian Villard.
Sounds Dutch. Oh my goodness, you were right, yes. He is Netherlandish.
Villard?
Villard.
But where did he work?
Come on.
What was his? He
Well,
had
he
an
died
even
in
bigger
Venice.
church job than I did.
He probably, oh, wait. Yeah, he worked at, St. Mark's.
Yes,
In Venice.
he was Kapellmeister or whatever at St. Mark's in Venice. So, wasn't he one of the, by extension cord, wasn't he one of the Ultramontani? Yes. Italy was dominated by those people who had been trained in the Franco-Flemish style. Well, what was significant about, when were Villard's dates? When was he functioning as a musician?
Well, depends on your tastes.
Really?
1490 to 1562.
1562. So his mature works is during the 50s, right? Mid-century. Just about mid-century. And what was Villard's major contribution to madrigal? Did you not work on this at all in music history? It seems like to me that a large focus of your attention should be really on what happened in the Renaissance, because there are many, many things that began in the transition between the late 1400s and the 1500s that are significant in the development of music. Venice was a major center, right? The Serene Republic of Venice, right? It saw many of the technical developments of the Renaissance, which was a major one that happened in Venice right at the turn of the century, in like 1500 or so, 1501.
Pauly Coral?
No.
He was among the first to extensively use chromaticism.
Who, Villard?
Villard, yes.
Well, yes.
Used a lot of syllabic setting rather than melismatic.
Well, that's on the right track too. Who was De Rora? Cipriano de Rora.
Also a magical composer.
Was he before or after Villard?
After.
And what is he noted for? What were his dates? What were De Rora's dates?
He died in 65.
Yeah.
It was only 3 years after Villard.
So he's roughly contemporary, yeah? What did De Rora do? Speaking of chromatics.
Five voices.
Yes. Well, that also extends to Villard. So originally the madrigal was a four-part texture. It was increased to 5 parts to expand the vocal range and thereby increasing the possibilities for expression. And then there was the intrusion of chromaticism on the basic diatonic structure. Now, the chromatic experiments of mid-century, of the 1550s or so, greatly heightened the expressive properties. But they had no idea of the functional potential of chromaticism on the music. that was carried to a great extreme by Gesualdo and Marenzio and others. Well, let's get back to, what were, anybody reading about De Rora? What did he do?
Worked at St. Mark's.
Where did the chromaticism come from? How did they stumble upon that? All this is necessary to understand what you're going to hear in this Monteverdi madrigal from almost 100 years later. 1638 to be precise, I think. Very late. All right, well, we've got two things going. A contribution of Villard. And you've already mentioned something, Lydia, about the text. Initially, in the early madrigals of people like Arkadelt and other northerners, it was essentially syllabic settings, right? And it borrowed a lot from a technique that I talked about last week very briefly, the frottala, which was a syllabic setting of a pretty simple poem, which was accompanied generally by root position sonorities, or 5/3 sonorities, playable on the lute or the guitar. Nobody find anything interesting about De Rora?
He used chromaticism.
What?
He used chromaticism.
I know, but
We couldn't find anything about
Where it
how,
came from.
why, when, where.
Yeah.
did the Greeks have anything to do with this?
Maybe.
I mean, they probably used a Ouija board to contact the Greeks, but
I'm just taking a stab in the dark here, but did it have anything to do with the development of instruments and
You're talking about
dramatic
De Rora?
possibilities? I'm talking about the time period that may have been a factor in De Rora's writing.
yes, something specific. Keep looking.
Was he writing these madrigals to be, to have instrumental
No,
playing?
no, but there's something in terms of the instruments that affected or influenced the use of, influenced his writing.
Portamento.
No.
Molto vibrato on every.
No. What is the arche cimbalo or arche organo? What are those instruments?
That's Will's favorite instrument.
What?
That's Will's favorite instrument.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Right.
he wrote a whole essay about the tuning of it.
Well, the diverse tunings.
Yeah.
Right, and that's a correct use of the word diverse. Who was responsible for the Renaissance of the... Well, actually, those were inventions of the Renaissance. And they were designed to what? See, it's disappointing that Will isn't here. He could have contributed something to the class.
Well, they were designed to experiment with different tuning and like
Yeah,
different
what
micro-
genres of tuning?
All of them.
Yeah.
Which, no.
Just intonation?
What are the Greek, no. What are the Greek tuning systems? The diatonic,
The chromatic.
the chromatic, and the enharmonic.
Those are tuning systems? I thought they were just tetrachords.
But they're tuned differently. The space between the symphonos was tuned differently. It could be a diatonic tuning where the intervals were essentially just intonation or whatever. And then the other intervals, the other tunings, enharmonic and chromatic, where the middle tones were adjusted either up or down to create very strange intervals. All of those things were De Rora's innovations. And he incorporated those techniques rather strangely into his madrigals. Well, at any rate, that's an awakening of the use of chromaticism and sometimes microtones to increase the expressive properties. Well, immediately that kind of fell out of fashion, and that all becomes concretized into the ubiquitous half step. Now, bear in mind that whole step and half step have abstract properties in the musicalistic system. They also have phonotactic significance in the auditory or expression system. Those are two different things. Because they are two different things, the abstract conception of a half step and a whole step, and then their various intonational properties, you have the idea that in Arabic music there are 34 divisions of the whole step. That's a fantasy. But, I mean, it's conceivable. So micro tunings and micro intervals are property really of the phonotactic system, not the computational system or the abstract system. All right. Well, we had got that done. What about Villard? What was his major contributions? A lot of these things went on in mid-century. Villard was the first person to insist that the text, I've said this before, that the text be represented or underlaid accurately, so that if you have a melisma, you are not putting the melisma on an unaccented or an accented syllable. You're not using a melisma that produces an accent on a word that's unaccented. He was very specific about text underlay. And that's mid-1500s. That also signals a change in the general process of composition. That was beginning to happen at the beginning of the 16th century. The transition from successive composition to simultaneous composition is a 16th century contribution. And more compositions began to be notated in score form rather than the older choir book form, where the structure of voice is written across the bottom and each of the voice parts is written successively. Soprano, alto, tenor, contratenor, bassus, whatever. What other great event happened at the beginning of the 16th century that was to push music ahead?
Like a musical event or like a cultural event?
No, it's a technological event.
Oh. Printing press?
What?
The printing press?
Well, that happened in the 15th century.
Oh, never mind.
However, it has significance to music in the 16th century. And that's also a Venetian invention. Although others, Attillon and France and what's his name, Rastel in Britain and others. But the famous Italian printer is Petrucci.
Oh.
Ottaviano Petrucci. Isn't there a font named Petrucci on your computer?
Oh, the
There's a
music
music
library.
library.
Yeah.
The Petrucci Music Library.
Well, he was the first person to develop the art of music printing from a triple impression technique. What does that mean? Well, you know, any
Just
chance I have to talk about printing is like a major thing because
My copy machine's broken.
Probably
no,
means it
because
takes
I was
more
as a
than
child I was
50
obsessed
seconds.
with printing presses
cool.
and printing. I've told you that.
You can watch tutorials on it online.
So, what is the triple process? From movable type, yes, you print the staff, right? And then you pass the page through the press again, this time for the note heads. And then the third time through the press for all the other symbols, the text and anything else on it. It's an extremely complicated process, and it requires pinpoint registration. That doesn't mean pulling out the stops on the organ. It means that when you pass the page through the press or align it on the bed, the press bed, it must be exactly aligned, so things have to coordinate. So it was a rather elaborate and very sophisticated technical innovation.
And that was invented in Italy.
Yes, 1501, the first printed collection of polyphonic music, instrumental music, and polyphonic music was published. What is the name of that publication? Did you not learn any of this? Look, it's emblazoned in my mind so much I go around thinking about it all the time. What is his collection?
Harmonice Musices od...
Ad Hecton, yes?
Yeah,
Right. The Ad Hecton.
which was mostly music by non-Italian composers.
Yes, well, of course. Because most of the so-called composers working in Italy were where? From where? From Flim. Right? They were Franco Flemish.
It's just Blanco.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Old rotters.
So we got all that going. Now, so the advent of printing made music, available to a much wider audience. When instrumental music was printed, what did you print? You printed a score and you printed a set of parts, right?
Or just a set of parts.
Or just a set of parts. By the time we got into the 17th century and Monteverdi, the art of printing had become very sophisticated, so that the old triple printing process was now either a two-stage or even a one-stage process. The madrigal that we're going to listen to of Monteverdi is from the 8th book of madrigals. And to my knowledge, the madrigal that we're doing today is the only Monteverdi madrigal that has ever been performed at Curtis. I know of no other performance of a Monteverdi madrigal. Do you?
I
You
mean,
know what,
when
Bill?
would one be performed?
What?
Like,
On the next CSO concert where we're celebrating all the early music of the 20th century.
Of the 20th century? No.
Is this from the Madrigals of War and Peace?
Yes. Mhm.
Teddy
War and
programmed some
Love.
of those.
What?
Teddy programmed some of these recently
oh no way.
in Louisville.
In Louisville, yes. But where do you think you got that idea from?
Gee, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. No. We did this piece in the 90s, and it was the first time that Monteverdi had been, a madrigal of Monteverdi had been heard in Curtis Hall. That's what it was called at that time. Right? And it was a massive undertaking because no one really understood what that music really sounded like. And it's a very interesting piece. Well, this 8th book of madrigals is called Madrigals of War, Love, and Representation. Well, the madrigals of representation were meant to be staged works. But in the preface, very extensive preface, well, not that long, but it is, lengthy, Monteverdi talks about this new style, which he calls the stile concitato, or agitated style. And it was intended to depict an emotional state that had not been previously depicted sufficiently. and that was the warlike state of intense emotion. And so war doesn't, well, it could refer to, battle, particularly, overt battle, but it actually really meant an internal battle or a mental battle where the mind is at war with itself. And of course, it's usually at war with itself because of love, right? Or some property like that. So this particular set of madrigals, which were obviously collected from previous compositions and then put into this volume, is an extensive and very beautiful and distinctive collection of different madrigal styles. These madrigals are no longer simple four-part compositions. They include instrumental parts, they include percussion parts maybe, and brass instruments that are not notated but were expected to accompany various passages in the madrigal. And they're highly sectionalized, and they're intended to express the content of the poem and the conflict of emotions that are in it extremely dramatically. This is a perfect example. Let's listen to it.
First one or the second one?
Let's listen to the second example.
Is that Tenet?
No, not that one.
Okay.
The one with the Monteverdi picture. Or you can stop it.
Michael can obviously understand what the text is.
That's it.
This is more riveting than opera.
All right? That's quite interesting, isn't it? We've had a veritable cornucopia of sonorities, right?
Is that a lute or like a guitar or something?
It's a lute, probably.
It's tuned really low. Or would it be like a theorbo because they can go
Yes,
really low?
it could possibly be that. Yeah.
I love theorbos.
All right. Well, what does the text say? Michael, do you actually speak Italian? Obviously you do. Your grandmother did, right?
A little.
Okay. Well, at any rate, here's what the translation that was given to me.
This is like
It says, "Now that heaven and earth and wind are silent, and sleep enthralls the beast and the birds." That's how far we've gotten. Let's try it again. Play it again from the beginning. Wow.
Yeah.
That was nice.
It's beautiful. It's amazing, right? It does absolutely nothing, right? But it does depict this text pretty clearly.
Yeah.
What does the second sentence say?
Night leads her starry chariot about.
Yeah, well, I mean, where it changes, it says, night, what about night? Night leads her starry chariot about, and in her bed, the sea lies waveless. So I think it was appropriate that we didn't get a lot of arpeggiandos from the lute or whatever. It was pretty constrained. Now, what about the performance of this?
Lots of dynamic changes.
A lot of dynamic changes?
Oh, lots of these anyways.
Well,
Hairpins.
it's very in
Where are
tune
the
to the
singers
meter
What?
of the text.
Where are the singers from?
They're from the Ultramontani. No, I don't know where they're from.
I think almost everyone's from the Ultramontani nowadays, unless you live in Italy.
What does it? Who's performing it?
I don't think it says, does
Yeah,
it?
all I have is a YouTube playlist to go on, and the channel's called Top Classical Music.
The pronunciation
Melodies,
is a
music.
little bit sketchy.
The what?
The pronunciation.
Yeah,
is
but
a
it's
little
old.
strange.
It's old. I mean, this is from 14th century.
Yeah, the Italian is old, but
Yeah.
their pronunciation.
But the pronunciation is also
In
old.
the second line, did they say the Algali? I heard something completely different.
Algid.
I definitely thought they said
G.
J.
Maybe that's all I
If
heard.
it's a soft G, maybe.
I think they just like they
I heard something
skipped a
just-
lot of it.
I couldn't tell.
Skipped a lot
No,
of
they
it.
didn't
No,
skip
not
it.
Scott. I just like went through it very fast. Went through the
Maybe it
text
was-
very quickly.
Well, that's one of the things. It's supposed to be declamatory. And the performance here is supposed to like emphasize the natural flow of the speech, right?
That was very
And
nice.
for my taste, I'm a little skeptical about that. I think it's slightly overdone in that kind of early music way. But it's interesting. There are other issues in this. But whatever, I think it's generally, the effect. The text is being declaimed, and it's the first part of the text is, creates this pretty serene image where everything is silent, right? And everybody's asleep, and who is Io? Yeah, isn't she
Cow.
the moon? That's the Phoenician goddess of the moon.
Oh.
She's traveling through the sky with Argus up there, following her around. Argus is the herdsman or monster with 100 eyes, right? It's the sky, stars in the sky. Has nothing to do with this. Okay, all right. Well, let's try to get this going up here. All right. It's not such a big deal, I don't think, yet. Okay, so
5.
is that a good bass note?
Yeah, truly. 3.
Okay. That's a good soprano note, right?
Yes.
And then what about this?
Beautiful.
Perfect.
That's great. All right,
So
that
impressed.
lasts for the entire. Let's see. Play it.
Oh,
From
come
the
on. We
beginning.
don't need to play it again. We can
Well, it
remember
moves to
it.
E major.
No, I want to play it.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay, stop right there. Anything happen up here?
The
Inner voice.
harmony changes
No, don't
at
say
the
that.
comma. Sorry to say
Parallel
harmony.
octaves. True.
And what the other notes I need here?
C
What
is
sounds
short.
doubled?
B.
Really think so?
sharp.
Or does it
I
go
think-
down to the E?
I think the E is doubled.
Well, whatever. I'm going to put those 3 notes there. Okay. So
It might
let's
be
do a
double.
figured bass. Remember there.
Not to do a lot of parallel
What?
octaves.
Not parallel octaves.
Well,
I mean, that's one of his like
Oh, jump back
stylistic.
a little bit.
Monteverdi is like doing that a lot.
Doublings.
second.
Not parallels, but doublings.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely a
I
so
think
sharp
the
in
G
the
sharp
tenor.
is double.
Yeah, the G sharp is doubled. Yeah?
That's a parallel octave.
No, it isn't. That's a
No.
doubling. That's a reinforcement.
We have no idea what the writing between voices is. I mean, it might sound like one, but it isn't actually, if it's like, depending on the way the parts are written.
That's true. The voices change around. That's what's going to make it. It also is a problem in this interpretation because they arbitrarily, in my opinion, bring out certain voices and they're not the right ones. Right? Okay? Let's keep going. I'm going to put this on there because it sounds like A to me. Go ahead.
Keep going.
What's the next text?
En el soleto.
And in her bed the sea lies waveless.
Yeah, the C is not making any motions. All right, let's go. Okay, all right. What is that? What's the bass note?
F or fa. Why does like an ordinary 6 to 5 sound so amazing there?
And what's
Well,
the
it's
top
also-
note?
Not just that.
Re, do, fa.
It should be that, right?
Yes.
Then re, do,
Okay,
re, do,
and
re, do,
let's
re,
do-
do, re, do, si.
Let's do that,
It's not
right?
Rhapsody in Blue.
All right, do it again.
Whoa. Loud.
Is that right?
Re,
Do,
do.
fa.
Yeah.
Dee, dee, do.
Yep. Yeah, right there. That's important. What does that go?
Re, do, si.
Do,
Re,
Re, do, si.
la. Okay. Do, re. Oops, sorry. La. Keep going.
Wait, they don't go re, do, si.
No.
Oh,
Is that a suspension or something?
I think the
Is that
A is
G?
wrong.
The, yeah, the suspension.
Is it mine eight or just a bad ear?
Play it again.
Sorry.
The law,
What happens in the bass? Anything?
Just fa to me.
Fa, right? Okay. Now play it again. Fa. Then the top voice go to E, Fa, right? And then this is what? E,
that looks like parallels.
what is parallels?
The soprano and bass going fa to me.
Okay. Well, that might not be. This might be in this voice,
Maybe.
right? Well, it is. I know. Okay? So this is what avoids the parallel octaves. So what would you call that in counterpoint?
Voice exchange?
No!
Delay.
It's a delay of melodic progression, right? Monteverdi would never write parallel octaves. He would have reinforcements, but he would never write something like that.
It seems like a really cheap trick to avoid parallel octaves though, because in the end it still sounds the exact same. When you
Well,
put
I don't
all the
think it
voices.
does. The way they perform it here, they suppress this note. And you don't hear the connection here. And then when they get to this, you barely hear that E. I think the voicing of the voices are, I don't think they're paying any attention to that. They're so concerned about that. Okay. All right, so we've got something missing here. And we need this. Isn't that it?
4-3, suspension.
Well, I'll be correct. Okay, and then what happens?
La major.
Okay, well, I'm happy to say that, the soprano is very active, right? Now, if you look at your harmony book on page 7,430. Have you ever seen that progression?
Yes.
What is it called? A very nice progression.
1651.
Phrygian cadence. Something.
Well, actually, if we consider this as that degree, yes? What
Six.
degree is this?
6.
Yes, it's a displacement, right? But then that moves down to this, yeah? So they would call this approaching 5 from above. I think that makes no sense at all because it actually is coming from above. And that doesn't tell you too much, right? Okay?
Doesn't that mean it makes the utmost sense?
What?
That doesn't that mean it makes the utmost sense because there's nothing to derive or take from it?
Yeah, well, that's very good. That's you said that. Okay. All right, let's keep going. This is split up between two voices. Yeah, I know. All right, we had to stop there. What?
It's kind of like a symphonic sonata.
What?
Exposition.
Okay, let's play that one more time. Wait a minute. What chord is that?
Re, sol.
It's re. Okay. Now listen to it. The bass. Stop. Okay. Explain that.
Bum, bum, beam, bum, ba, da. Bum, bum, beep. So,
Doesn't this all ascend?
Yeah.
Right? What's on the top there? Let's listen to it one more time. Stop. What's on the top? Octaves, right?
Wait, isn't there a fa sharp above that in the first value?
The bass goes down to do. We're in the lower octave.
Is it one of the vocal parts or the lute in there?
I
That is
don't know.
One more time?
Here.
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
is.
But it's also going up.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
This goes here.
Is
Right.
is it really a re in the second on the first note, not a fa sharp?
It's a ring.
Yeah, it's a right.
Like I hear. Yeah, I hear. Ah,
Done.
nice harmony.
Go ahead.
Sounds probably the lute.
What was the chord after the C major?
Did you like come in earlier? Or is that actually
I
like?
think it's like that.
Yeah, it's really like that.
It's setting up the suspension.
So we've got a Re major chord here, right? Is this Re up there? No.
No, that's correct.
How do you write a Fa sharp?
3 letter lines, or just go down to the bass clef.
Okay, let's do that, okay? And then,
Yeah.
okay. Well, and then this
And then
goes to,
natural with a 4/3, I believe.
I thought there was
what's over here?
C flat.
a.
C flat. So 4/3.
Wait, no, it's definitely.
7 to 6.
That's.
What's in this chord?
Oh yeah.
Then to B flat, right?
Yeah.
Follow to
But in the
So,
to 3 suspension over that, isn't there?
Over the F.
Yeah, and the B flat.
No, but over the F, there's a,
Well, do it again.
No, no way.
in one of the other voices.
Yeah, it sounds like there's,
It really sounds like it.
unless it's like really out of tune or
It
something.
might be out of tune.
Yeah, I think it's out of tune.
Wow, so much for
Expressive.
perfect intonation, okay, doesn't matter. Okay, that's an F major
And then
chord.
there's a 7/6.
And then- Is the C on the top there?
Yes.
Yes.
And then that's
Oh.
the
7 to
suspension,
6,
right?
Yeah.
And it is a
Alright.
7/6, right?
And there's B flat in the top on that chord, right? Or was it something else?
I don't know.
Okay.
Play it once again.
I thought the lava comes the top voice.
And see that the voicing in this is just all over the place.
So there's a fa, and then both of those go to sol, so it's a 7/6, but it's a 7/5/3 to 6/3.
It's a seventh, like a seventh chord, yes?
Yeah.
And then this does what?
6/4. La, fa, re, la, re,
It's
fa.
just a passing tone.
La, sol, fa, sol, fa.
Isn't that what's there? Yeah. Isn't that like a 6/5?
No, that's a 4/3.
I mean, 4/3?
Yeah, it's hard to hear the E, but.
7/5/4, right? Okay, and then
And then 6/4.
this go.
6/4.
Yeah, potential.
Is F on top?
Oh, yeah. Wait,
I
unless
think
the,
F is on top.
or does the A hold? Just, I
The A
can't
holds.
tell. This Yeah,
Yep.
you should
Yeah,
just
you
really
just
hear it.
can't, I mean, the voicing in here is, in my opinion, totally screwy.
Why did you
I
pick
don't
this
know whether,
one?
what?
Why did you pick this one?
Because this is supposed to be the definitive recording.
What top
Definitively
classic
what?
stuff?
Made in 1550 by.
No, I'm,
Monteverdi
really, this is
scholars.
a very famous recording. I mean, the,
From
like,
Mejores
poo-poo.
Musicas Clásicas.blogspot.com.
That's right, okay. All right, now look at this. That's pretty advanced. Where does that occur on the words? It says, I'm awake, I think, I burn, I weep for her whose face. Is that what it says?
Well,
Velho
wait.
penso ardo piango. Where does that thing occur? Play it again.
Probably on
Her
Burn.
face.
I wait.
Passed that a while ago.
I wait. I think. I
What is it? On.
Yeah,
But-
the suspension
Yeah.
is on Weep.
Weep. Right? Okay. Or cry or whatever. Okay. Now, let's go back and figure this out. Okay? So, that's one thing. And then, what is the relationship in here? Right?
Dominant on 5/3. Play.
Okay, what is this doing in here?
Oh, going back to law.
Well, yeah, but how does it get back there?
By step. Carefully.
Explain the voice leading. That's what I want to know. What's happening in here? Is this chromatic? There's chromatic elements in here. What key is this in?
A.
A major or minor, right? Okay? So what is this? it comes back to this E, right?
Mhm. Is it something passing from E going to?
Well, what is,
It's like a neighbor
what,
figure.
what is this, in what is the D in relationship to the A?
Isn't it?
Embedded tonic.
It's like a sequence.
It's like a neighbor note in soprano.
Isn't that it? That's not there, but it is there. Isn't that a rising fourth? Yeah. That's what this progression is. It is a rising fourth in the soprano,
Descending fourth.
and that, what?
Wait,
Descending fourth in the bass.
oh yeah.
isn't it?
Could be, yes. Mhm.
Looks like it.
Okay? So these chords, they're all what?
Right.
5/3, yes? And then this is the cadential chord or whatever that moves the voices out like that, yes? And this returns to this position. Right? Okay, let's play the passage one more time. So it's the A chord that's being prolonged, and there's this fourth progression at the top. Hence, the suspension on the A. So it moves from E, this turns into the top note of the fourth, it becomes the suspension, yes? That they got right, okay. All right, let's keep going. All right, stop right there.
I'm gonna need a
Oh, that's
fourth, right?
cool. The first four
Well,
words
that's
are-
not, there's something really weird coming up. What's happened here?
The first four words of the line are superimposed over the next part of the text.
Yes,
It's
but
like
what,
what's going on.
what are we hearing? Go back to this again. If you know, say it. No, all the way back to here. Now you know what's happening. Yes?
Oh.
Isn't it a repetition of this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right.
Well, it's
So-
even, in a way, it's a repetition of the opening. You've got that A minor, the 6/3
Yeah, well,
going to
that's
A major.
that's incorporated into this.
Mhm.
Yes? But this is an extension. It's a repetition of this with other voices. Well, this progression superimposed on the franticness of the next text line, which says what?
Her face is ever before me. To my sweet pain, war is my condition.
Well, we hadn't gotten to war is my condition yet. Okay? All right, it's absolutely amazing that he connects the pain, right? The pianger or whatever it is, right? Or sorrow. And then he goes on and talking about the sorrow or whatever in her face, right? Every time he thinks about her face. So it's a repetition of this material, yet the text finishes its thought in that line. Yes? I think that's quite astounding. Okay. Play it one more time and we'll continue. All the way from here. Oh. still on this text. All right, stop that, okay? Now, we're running out of Blackboard. Let's do this section again. It's the third time we've had this value or whatever it is, and the sorrow every time he looks at his face, the pain. All right, so let's do that section because it's important. By the way, this fragment ends on what? On E, yes? Okay, so let's see how we got there.
So start from Kimi Svace or from?
Well, after this, the second time through this, it's the third time, value.
Uh-oh, okay, I'll try and find it.
So we've already gone to E, right? Is this correct? Wait a minute.
Yes.
Now we're on G?
It went to B briefly.
Oh, here,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
right. And then what happens down here?
Goes to D sharp.
Ray sharp, yes? Yeah? And what's the sonority over this? Ooh.
Well, we have a 6-5, or not, sorry,
Ray
4-3.
sharp. Sol,
Sol.
C.
The whole thing's over a suspension though, it sounds like an augmented chord for a moment.
Read that, do it again. Wow, okay, one more time. So what are the notes above here?
Re,
Sol.
sol, si, re, fa, la.
Yeah, the top two voices, those
Wait.
moved down, but it's
No
natural.
sol sharp.
Natural.
Yeah, because that's the major third, right?
Yeah.
Right, okay, now, if that goes like this, that's gonna give you what?
Suspension.
A root position diminished triad, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Is that all you hear there? Play it one more time.
Yeah.
That all you hear? Right? Okay? All
It's
right?
a passing tone though, so it's allowed, right?
Isn't,
But, well,
Isn't the
keep
ratio
playing it.
double?
Let's play it once again and continue ahead.
isn't the ray sharp doubles?
Yeah, both in the bass and the tenor.
I'm afraid to put that up there.
The tenor goes from a C, re.
That
there.
doesn't matter. Okay? Right?
E fa la re fa sharp.
Re natural.
Well, the diatonic
They're,
is that.
9/8 there.
Fa la re.
Right? It's 6, yes?
Yes.
From the E. Go ahead. And that's what?
C sol.
7-6.
Ray.
That's 7, right?
Yeah.
And then when it's 6,
No,
the so
that's
becomes so
wrong.
sharp.
Fa,
What's that
C,
note in there?
C,
D, right?
Yeah.
Isn't there a ray in the bass?
And then to sol sharp mi.
On a sol.
One more time.
Yeah. I don't
Sol
know.
sharp mi.
There's a G there.
And then
Okay, now you have to listen really carefully here. One more time. All right, one more time. That goes here, and this goes to that sharp. And And this time you hear a what?
Six five. I think that's the loop. You just can't hear their bottom
Yeah.
G there.
Yes.
So that's why you hear the D in the bass.
E's, Re, C, Sol, sharp.
Is it C, Re, Sol sharp?
Is there a Mi in the
There's a Mi on top.
Fa, mi. So that's a 7-6. Realize it.
Is there a Re there?
Yes, the Re suspends through,
Listen to it again.
Re natural at that point.
it's already always been Re.
One more time. Is the Re there?
No.
No, it is not. Okay, that's a 6-3, right? Okay, and so, this is really what?
Voice extreme.
Yep. It's a chromatic voice exchange, yes? Okay? All right, keep going, and then that goes up to B, right?
Mhm.
Four, three, right?
Mhm.
I'm just gonna put that. There, that's it. Right. And that, okay? Right. Okay, back to the E. So this is a fifth progression on E. Very highly organized fifth progression. And that's that, right? That's the neighbor tone, right? And then this goes through a voice exchange leading on up to the fifth arpeggiation, right? Mi, mi, sol, si, back to mi. Yep? Okay, now, continue. We got that? Actually, no, play that E thing again. Okay, now, wait a minute, isn't this exactly the same progression, moved down a third? Yes, but this time, you really get hit over the head with something. There's a direct conflict between the C sharp and the C natural, yep? Play it one more time. Actually, play both of these sections, the one on E and then the one on C. No, back up. All the way back up to the E.
Is that no? Even further. Okay. Yeah, even further. Here.
The suspension is there, we just didn't do it. All right, now. Same thing. Except this time over A.
That was definitely intentional on the C and the C sharp, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay, stop. Okay. And where are we? We're back to A, yes? Okay, A major or minor?
Major.
It's major, yeah. And where are we in the text?
End of the second stanza.
Still, still this.
Have we had
main-
guerra? Have we done that yet?
No.
First line of the second.
It's just the first line of the second, whatever it is. What kind of poem is this? Anybody know? It's a Petrarchian sonnet, right? And I don't know why this is written this way. I tried to put the mark where the real lines are. There, the Petrarchian sonata is organized in an octave with 4 lines, quatrains, right? It's 4 plus 4. Then the second part of the sonnet is a sestet, is a 6 line, right? 3 and 3. So we are just finished with the first quatrain, or the first part of the octave. Okay. No, not yet, actually. We've got 2 more lines to go. Okay. Let's go. All right. This is the stile concitato, right? The agitated style. Guerra. Right? What does the word guerra mean? War. Obviously. Okay. Now wait a minute. What happens to the tonality?
G.
It's dropped down a whole step. It's G, right? Just a whole step. Okay. Let's go.
Alright.
All right, wait a minute. Okay. I don't know whether you can hear that because of their like that and the reverb, which is great. But what sonority did it end on?
G major.
Ah, it's hard to tell.
Play it again. Listen.
Isn't that G?
If that's G minor, then
I don't think so.
There was a dissonant note in the top voice. I couldn't tell which.
That- well, the
top voice
drum-
was
I think,
G,
I
wasn't
think
it?
that's the problem of the articulation.
Yeah, the drum it obscures a whole bunch of things. Do it. Play it one more time.
Oh,
Is there
D
just like
major
an
because of the
eighth
lute.
What? It's what?
Ends on D major.
Yes, it's a D. So the bass is gone. Sol, re, sol, re, sol, re, sol, re, sol, re, sol, re, sol, re. Yep. Okay. All right, that's so hard to hear. I'm not so sure whether I would have used a drum like that. But I don't know. It's the inspiration of the moment. Play it one more time and then we'll continue. Wow. Okay. Stop that. What happened on the large scale? We go from G to what?
B.
So up a third, yes? Okay. Continue. Everybody clear about that? What did that end on?
D.
D.
D again, right? Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah. All right, now that's interesting. All right. And so it goes G down to what?
Yep.
Play it one more time. It's an odd progression, completely logical. Yeah, so what's the in-between chord?
Fun.
E and F.
So we go from G major to E minor to D minor to C major.
Oh, they're all 5/3s, yeah? That's a very strange progression. Play it one more time. What is the text there again?
Only by thinking of her do I find some peace.
Okay,
Right?
yeah. B, C. Okay, and, yeah, okay, so that ends on E, yes? Okay, all right, let's continue. All right, now, this is the sestet, this is the last part of the sonnet. Now, in the score, you would have a division. You would have Jorge as the first part, and then the second part would be written like it was a different piece of music, right, with its own title. So that's an indication that there are two parts to this sonnet. The first part, this is what I remember from this, is supposed to set out some kind of dilemma or problem or circumstance, and then the second part of the sonnet is supposed to either reflect on it, construct a solution to it, or give some kind of consequence to the first part. Okay, let's start this again, second part.
Oh, sorry, too far back.
Good. Now I want you to listen carefully to the voice part here. All right, now, what kind of chord is the voice part horizontalizing? Mi, do, la, right.
Sol, fa, sol.
And then what happens? The lute comes in,
Sevens. No.
and it goes to G, right? Okay, just as long as you get that. And I think that the lute should actually be filling in a little more, because it makes it not too clear of what that is, right? So, in my grand analysis of this, the first section ends on like a half cadence, right? And then the second section begins again, right? So you can say, oh, you're reading something into the music, but I really do believe that Monteverdi has a kind of instinctive awareness of what the A tonality is doing, and that the first half of this ends on some incomplete thing. Then he starts over again. It's remarkable, right? It's a very, very early example of the awareness of that kind of division in the structure. Okay.
From that section again?
Yeah. hold on. Go all the way back to the beginning of this chromatic section.
Oh, so.
So the first chromatic movement is what in the bass?
B to A, and then goes down to F.
Well, it starts on what?
Or does it start on
Play it one more time from the very where this begins.
And then register.
After the little lute suspension, which is not enough. C, right? Re, A sharp, E, F sharp, C is the go. A, C. Back to A, right?
Do it again.
Through 5 to 6s.
With my alteration.
G, G sharp. Right. The first time it goes what? The go chords.
C.
C to A, right? And this goes what? Play the whole thing again. Do, re, mi, sol. Yes? No. A? Okay, so the first group does what?
C to A.
A, right? And then this goes what?
E.
E, right? That's all I was after. Okay, go ahead. To me, that's so bogus. But at any rate,
I will not
whatever.
take
It's lovely.
any
It's
credit for
beautiful,
I
that.
can't take
right?
credit for that either.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. Where did we end?
A long noodle.
A.
On A, yes. Okay. And where are we in the text?
At the end.
We're still Mirdizane Punji. We haven't gotten to the fourth line yet, right?
Yeah, we haven't gotten to the, and since my torment has no end, right?
Right, we have not.
Okay. All right. Keep going.
Rather idyllic lives. I'm happy.
Okay, stop right there. What's going on here? The preceding section was A, then to E, yes? And where does this part, what does this part do? G, right? And then where are we now?
To B.
B, up a third and then down to E minor.
Okay. All right, just checking, okay? The last, stop. What is that interval that the tenor or whomever sings that? Play it, start this section one more time.
Mi re nasco.
There.
Oh, wow.
What is that interval?
10.
It's a tenth.
Crazy.
Yes. It's a perfect opportunity to do what?
Scale
So
down.
far,
What?
Scale all the way down.
well, text painting, because
Introduce.
I wasn't.
No,
able
the connection of that interval. Right? I think that's a missed opportunity.
Oh,
There are
for
two,
Mento.
those two notes are separated and they should definitely be joined.
Do you think I lost track of where the text was, but it's so far. Is that interval on lunga, like Michael was saying, or
Yeah.
far?
Yeah.
Would that be like,
Right.
so wouldn't you want to separate the two notes in that case?
I don't think
Well,
so.
I think you hear the distance more by
I don't think
connecting
so.
them rather than just singing them independently.
You're trying to connect it from the lowest to the top. It's almost an unbridgeable distance. I would think that that'd be a great place to do that, but
Yeah. Well,
Whatever.
it's more than
Compositionally or performance wise?
What?
Compositionally or performance wise?
performance, I think. Isn't that, oh wow, it's really bad.
Oh, it's not.
This is what I wanted to avoid. However,
It's slow.
by this time, well, this is 1638, and I've said this 5 million times. What is one of the first vocal ornaments ever described?
Port of Law?
It's the porte-voix or portamento. The porte-voix means to carry the voice. It's an expressive gesture. That's a huge interval to span like that. And what's the word? Play it one more time.
Salute.
Wow.
Oh, that's one of the
All right, that's an incredibly dramatic place, so we had to have the cornet cover the top soprano because of fear that she couldn't make that note. Play the ending one more time. All right, right? Okay. that it comes into what? As close as together as possible, right, on the A minor triad. And then it moves out to what note? What's the lowest sounding note?
A.
Mi or La.
Play it one more time.
In this sonority or?
La, that's really low.
Yeah.
Okay, so from great D to A2, that's really a wide distance. Fantastic, but it's purely an A. A what? Minor or major?
Yes.
A lot of it, I mean, all of the cadences are in major, yeah? But it's this minor tinge to it. And many of the progressions are mixed, both major and minor, the E major chord, but then the C major chord, right, that's minor, right? All right, well, I think tonality has come quite a far ways, and the sections that are supposed to be warlike, all they're doing is going from the 5th degree, from whatever is considered the 1st degree to the 5th degree. It's that tonic dominant progression.
It's kind of funny that one of them really sounds like those vocal ornaments, like guera, 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 guera. I can't pronounce it.
Guera.
Yeah, guera, guera, da, 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 da. I was like
It's crazy.
No,
the epoch, or not the what's the word, the climax, the best part of music nowadays. That vocal exercise.
Really?
Yeah, I really think that's like the magnum opus of classical music. It's right there.
That?
Yes.
Yeah, well, okay. That's a palindrome. Okay. All right, thank you so much for braving the snow. And oh, I am canceling classes tomorrow.
For the entire school.
No. Okay.
Stop streaming?
Yeah.